Hey, welcome everyone. This is Thursday evening. Humanity Chats with Marjy is on. If you're here, please tell your friends. Share this. If you're on Facebook, welcome. Share this with your network. If you're on YouTube, hey, send this to your WhatsApp and your whole network. And if you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. We'd like to know where our viewers are. My name is Marjy Marj. I am your host. Humanity Chats comes to you on Thursdays. And what we do is we get together and we talk about everyday issues that impact humans. Now, today we're going to have two amazing women come talk to us. It is Prematurity Awareness Month. And so we're going to learn more about babies, especially preemies. And then we're going to learn about the mothers as well. These two ladies have both had preemies. You know, premature babies are so near and dear to my heart. My mom was born at 7 months. And so I'm so happy that we're able to do this and to learn more about this topic that, the general public might not know about. Now, before I bring Kate and Frankie into the house, I wanted to acknowledge a few things. First of all, today, I'm originally from Ghana, for those of you who don't know. And the former president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, passed this morning. So, I'd like to recognize that, and may he rest in heaven. Also, I'm an author, and one of my fans died from COVID-19 yesterday. She goes by Casey Reeds. Well, Casey Reeds was an amazing woman. She said my work taught her how to look at racism with a different lens. I'm so sorry that Casey Reeds lost her battle with COVID-19. My prayers go up to her and to her family. May they be in God's warm embrace. These are tough times, guys. COVID-19 is real. Remember to mask up, wash your hands, do everything that the medical professionals are telling us to do. We want to stay healthy, and we want to be with our loved ones. I'm so sorry to everybody who has had a negative impact because of this, whether it be job loss, whether it be sickness, loss of family members. I lift you all up in prayer. This is Humanity Chats. Share your stories with me. Go to marjymarj.com. Send me an email. Even if you have a prayer topic, please share it with me. We are in this together, and together we can go far. So at this time, we're going to play a small intro video, and then we're going to be bringing Kate and Frankie into the house. Now, if you're here, remember, we're in the chat room. Tell us where you're watching from. And also, your comments and your questions are welcome. Kate and Frankie have loads of experience being mamas, being advocates, and so they will be able to answer your questions. Again, viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to Humanity Chats. We really appreciate you watching this every Thursday. We are on all the major podcasts. We're on YouTube, so share this with your network. And let's get our guests into the house. Hey, ladies.
Hello. Hi.
I think we have a little echo. Somebody may have something running, some other device running.
Is it me?
I don't know. Well, we'll just go with it. It may be me, right? We never know. It's good to see you, ladies. Kate and Frankie, welcome to Humanity Chats.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is such an It is such an honor to have you both and for you both to be advocates of preemies. And, you guys are both mothers and have had a similar experience. I cannot wait to learn more about your experience. Now, before we get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? I think we want to start with Frankie.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Frankie Robertson. I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I am a maternal child health expert. I've previously worked with the March of Dimes for 12 years. Recently, earlier this year, I started a consulting firm. It's called the Amandla Group, and it's a social justice consulting firm that focuses on addressing the social and political determinants of health that impact the health of Black women and Black birthing people. I also am a mission mom. I'm a preemie mom. My daughter, Zoe Amandla, was born at 28 weeks and a day in 2018. So not only am I working to help other moms have full-term healthy pregnancies, I too am a mission mom, and I'm working with folks like Kate to share my story, to help empower other women and help other families have very positive birth outcomes.
Well, thank you, Frankie, for empowering other women and for sharing your story. We all know that stories are very important. Once you share your story, somebody out there will identify with it, and you never know who you're going to be lifting up from misery, or who you're going to be comforting, or who you're even going to be, teaching. So thank you so much for that initiative and for sharing your story. Now, Kate, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. I'm Kate Morrow. I live here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. 3 years ago, I had twins who were born at 28 weeks and 3 days gestation. And prior to that, I've been working in healthcare marketing, public relations, advocacy, and fundraising. And when I had these twins, I just kind of had this overwhelming calling that I had been given this set of professional skills and this personal experience to do something more. So I just had this ignited passion that, our experience, that this couldn't be it. And that, I didn't want other women to be in the position that I was in. And I just felt this overwhelming desire to really combat prematurity, to help other women, to support other women. And because of that, I got very involved. We got involved in the March of Dimes. Our family was really honored to be the March of Dimes ambassador family. And I didn't want to stop there. So I had a great opportunity to be selected as one of the inaugural Gretchen Carlson Fellows through the March of Dimes. And through that, I really got to ignite my personal passion, which is birth trauma and maternal mental health. And then coupled with that, I can just continue to be really involved with our NICU and trying to change that experience and make it an even better experience for moms and babies. And then continue to be extremely involved in pediatric healthcare causes. I have really found my calling through our journey.
Wow. Supporting women. That's so important. Thank you for doing that. I mean, you and Frankie are both amazing. And, we have some viewers watching us, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. We have Dr. Newman watching from North Carolina. Thank you, Dr. Newman. We have Jefferson Crystal watching from Spartanburg, South Carolina. And we have Rosie, Rosemont Sapong. Yes, she's saying sorry to hear about, in the beginning I talked about the former president of Ghana who died. So she is sorry to hear about that. Ladies, you are the experts here. Now, would you want to tell us a little bit? And I think I'm going to go back to Frankie. Frankie, would you want to shed a little bit of light on premature births and how, the frequency and how it impacts our community?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So preterm birth, just to start off with a working definition for everyone, is the birth of a baby before 37 weeks gestation. So when we were talking about preterm birth, we're talking about babies, moms that are giving birth to babies before they've had an opportunity to fully develop in the womb at 40 weeks. So preterm birth is increasing, and overall, each year, March of Dimes releases a preterm birth report card, which ranks the United States and each state in terms of its preterm birth rate. And here where I am in Louisiana, since the inception of the preterm birth report card, Louisiana has received an F from the March of Dimes in terms of the rate of women who were giving birth prior to 37 weeks. With that preterm birth rate, there are very startling statistics for minority women, in particular Black women. In Louisiana, the preterm birth rate is 13%, but Black women give birth preterm at a rate of 52% higher than all other women. So there are some really major disparities there in terms of race as it relates to preterm birth. I, being a Black woman, now being a part of this statistic, can definitely look back at just things that I've experienced and how that contributed to my overall health and my experience with preterm birth. So it is rising across the country. All women, all races and ethnicity are impacted by preterm birth. We do know that there are startling disparities as relates to race for Black women and Hispanic women in particular.
Now, and this goes back to you, Frankie. I know that you are interested in health inequities. Now, how does that correlate to Black and Hispanic women and preterm births?
So do you mean in terms of contributing factors? Is this what you're asking? Why are the rates higher? Well, there's many factors that are at play when we look at health disparities. The social determinants of health, the societal factors that impact our overall health is a major contributor. Lack of access to health care, health insurance, prenatal care, how women are recovering in, well, we're not talking about premature birth. I'm getting into maternal mortality at this point, but we'll stay with premature birth. But looking at the societal and the political factors that shape our everyday lives that contribute to chronic toxic stress is a huge factor. All women, of course, are subjected to stress at some point in their lives. So we do know that there is a considerable amount of stress that Black women and minority women experience, especially in this country, related to racism, systemic racism that just permeates everything that we touch, every element of our lives that we basically have to survive through and come in contact with. And research has shown that stress does have a negative impact on our overall health, and stress, toxic stress or allostatic stress loads, has a negative impact on women of childbearing age that can complicate pregnancies and contribute to preterm birth. We know that chronic conditions such as hypertension or high blood pressure, pregnancy-induced hypertension is one of the major contributors to preterm birth. We know that conditions such as diabetes, other chronic health conditions are contributing factors. We also know that perinatal mood disorders, things like depression, show an increase in susceptibility to giving birth preterm and creating poor birth outcomes. So there are a host of different reasons. And honestly, there's some things that we don't know. We don't know all of the things that contribute to preterm birth. But what we do know is that societal factors play a major part. And because of the inequities in our society in terms of proper access to care and the things that we navigate in our daily lives, those do impact premature birth.
It's heartbreaking to learn about premature births and, and the inequities in our society. Now, Kate, I know you had your babies at 28 weeks. Do you want to share a little bit about that story with us?
Absolutely. I actually read a quote this afternoon before we got on. I was really, thinking about how to share our story, and I share it so much, and I've kind of gotten a little numb to sharing it. And I saw a quote today that said, when you can share your story without crying, it's a sign of healing. So I thought that was a really interesting quote that I read today, and I saw that as a sign. So I had a very typical pregnancy, my husband and I did have some infertility issues that caused us to go on some infertility medications, and we don't know if that's the reason we had twins or not. But we learned really early on that we were having twins at 6 weeks, and it was exciting. You know, twins are fun. You get to match them, and you think about friends for life. But my doctor warned me early on that twins have, high risk complications, that I was considered high risk because they were twins. And so I didn't really ever think about that. I thought, oh, that's other people that are high risk. I'll be fine. My pregnancy was extremely normal. And at 24 weeks, I went for a very routine doctor appointment. And I expressed some symptoms that I was having, and I just thought they were normal pregnancy symptoms. And my doctor, her ears perked up, and she said, I'd feel a little bit better if we investigated this a little bit further. And she did a test on me that's called a fetal fibronectin test. And when that comes back positive, it means that you're likely to go into labor in the next 10 to 14 days. So that made it very real to me. I was only 24 weeks pregnant, and I thought, my goodness, if I have these babies in 10 to 14 days, what does that mean? I didn't know anything about preterm birth. I had never seen a NICU. So I went home and I started researching, that babies born at 25 to 26 weeks can die. They could have cerebral palsy. They could have very serious lifelong complications. So that was extremely scary for me. And at that time, I started a journey on bed rest, and my only job in life was to keep my babies inside me and keep them cooking. And meanwhile, I had a job that I had to do. I had to make sure that my family was getting income and insurance. So there was a lot of stress factors. And the most important job at that time was keeping myself mentally and physically healthy and keeping those babies growing. What I had was called incompetent cervix, which meant my body thought it was time to go into labor, and it wasn't. So I was luckily able to hang on for 4 more weeks and make it to 28 weeks, which is being born 12 weeks too soon, which to some that don't know a lot about preterm birth can seem very, very scary. But it's really interesting. As I've become more knowledgeable about preterm birth, there are so many babies born even earlier than that. Some babies born at 22 weeks, 23 weeks that are surviving. And of course, there's health challenges. One thing that I always like to tell women that are going through this, I have a lot of friends that turn to me when they know somebody that's going through preterm birth or having preterm labor or a child in the NICU. I have 2 babies that were born at 28 weeks. And, the NICU was a very scary journey. We went through a lot of things, and there were a lot of challenges that we faced, a lot of hurdles that we crossed. And we were very lucky to bring home 2 very, very healthy babies. They're miracles. But our outcome is not everyone's outcome. There are babies that come home on oxygen or trach or with some serious complications. So just because I had 2 babies born at 28 weeks that beat all the odds doesn't mean that everybody does. So, we were the exception to the rule. So anyway, we went through our NICU journey. Our children lived in the NICU for 76 days. And then they came home, and, the NICU is a journey, but once you get home, that's a totally separate journey that I would kind of love to get into. And that's really where my, maternal health journey started, where PTSD became a very real term for me in my life.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. When I was pregnant with I have a son. And when I was pregnant with my son, I had to be on bed rest because I had these fibroids and, I had all these things happening during my pregnancy. So it was really tough, especially for an outgoing person like me, to just be at home and be in bed just to make sure that my baby stayed in there. And there were times that I thought he was about to pop out, and it was very scary for me. But luckily for me, he stayed in. I had a few close calls. I had to be going to the hospital. They were checking me here and there and advising me advising me to stay put, because there were times where I felt like, oh, I can walk to the kitchen, I can go up the stairs, and I didn't follow all the rules. But when I realized that baby could drop anytime, I started following instructions, and luckily, I was able to have my C-section at the assigned date. So I can empathize with having twins and making sure you trying as hard as possible for them not to come out. Um, I'm so glad that you had the kind of care that you got at the hospital for the babies to come home. I have seen some Facebook pictures. I did some digging on you, and so I saw your beautiful babies. What a blessing! um, you're so lucky. You were blessed to have those twins. I'm very happy for you. Now I know I'm going to get into the mothering part, but my next question for you, Kate, is: so when you have these preemies, how does the hospital bill look like? Because I know that I had a normal, well, it wasn't a normal birth. I had a C-section, but my bill was quite high despite having insurance. So would you want to tell the audience how that looks like?
Yes. And again, billing was another area that we were extremely fortunate and lucky. At the time, my husband and I both had insurance through our employers. So the NICU stay was not financially burdensome for us because we had great insurance. But that being said, again, we were the abnormal statistic there. We have many friends who went through the NICU that are still on payment plans, that are going to be on lifelong payment plans to pay these NICU bills off. Our binder of bills that I kept up with was this thick at the end of the NICU stay, keeping up with those bills and making sure that everything was being checked off and taken care of was a full-time job. A lot of children that are born have Medicaid. I think that helps a lot with the NICU stay. But again, it was extremely burdensome. And one of the bills that I remember really well was the neonatologist coming in to see them every single day. For the first 36 days of their life, they were in intensive critical care. And that is intensive. That's not just growing and feeding. That is like intensive care. They were on essentially life support with their oxygen. Our bill for the neonatologist coming in once a day without insurance was thousands of dollars a day for that, small visit per baby per day. It was an over $2 million stay for them that we were very fortunate to have insurance cover for us. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes. And so, I'm really glad that you asked that. Having a premature baby has so many effects on a family. There's the emotional, there's the mental, there's the financial, and the effects of a premature baby are lifelong for the baby themselves with all the challenges that they face, but also a family. The emotional stress that it put on my husband and I, and then there's the financial. And, it can take a long time to recover from that and feel like you're normal and feel like you are sustainable. And when you're trying so hard to heal after having a traumatic birth and experience, to have that financial impact on top of you, it can be horrific. And while we had great insurance, another financial aspect for us is when it was time for me to go back to work, the neonatologist said, Jack and Lily cannot go to a daycare. They have no immune system. A cold could potentially kill them. So I was looking at a nanny, and we completely drained our life savings to afford a nanny so that I could go back to my job and have that job. So, we were fortunate in our insurance situation, but we felt the financial impact in many, many other ways. So I'm really glad that you asked that, because the financial toll is a tremendous aspect of healing and what a NICU family goes through.
Oh, I can't imagine that, because with you even had to undergo IVF treatment, right?
Not total IVF. We were in the first few phases. So I again, luck on my side. I didn't have to go through some of the more expensive, intensive treatments that I know many women have to go through. My husband and I, we conceived our twins through infertility medicine called Clomid.
I am familiar with that, because Frankie, I have one kid, so you can imagine I've taken every medicine there is out there to try and have more kids. So, and it does take a financial toll on you. I remember when we eventually decided to stop. It was like, oh, we got a little extra money now, just yeah. But Frankie, I think, would you want to share your story of being in the NICU, and do you want to share the impact on you?
Sure. And, I just want to just echo Kate too. I mean, Kate made some amazing points. She made a lot of points that I wanted to make as well. And Marjy Marj also has shared information about the societal cost of preterm births. I mean, literally in the tens of millions of dollars. And I think the average cost of a preterm birth, given take the less extensive piece of this that Kate shared in having twins, is about $60,000. And as Kate said, when your child leaves the NICU, that's not often the end of the story, whether it's a healthy birth or a healthy outcome without lifelong complications beyond the 0 to 3 years, or just extensive medical interventions that are needed beyond again, 0 to 3. There's early intervention services that many states offer that parents can have subsidized, often based upon your income. That could mean no cost direct to the parents, or the parents pay a portion of the cost based upon your income to make sure that your child is able to catch up developmentally. And I know that my daughter, she's nearing the end, it's just bittersweet, of her early intervention services, because we absolutely love all of her early intervention specialists. But she has a special early intervention instructor that works with her and monitors her development. And she's doing great. As a matter of fact, they're making early assumptions saying that she's gifted. So of course, as a mom, I'm like, well, that's just great, But there's a lot in between leaving the NICU and from where you are now that a lot of parents don't have the opportunity or the platforms that you've blessed Kate and I with to be able to talk about this. And then also my daughter, presently, we are able to take advantage of occupational therapy to make sure she's meeting her milestones, and then physical therapy. After we left the NICU, and I'll back up the beginning NICU journey, my daughter I took her to physical therapy within, I think, a month, because I noticed that she had a condition that I had never even heard of, that was just based upon limited neck mobility that could be addressed, but she had to have extensive therapy. So I too went back to work, but I was navigating taking her to local physical therapy place, literally this small, about that small, and she had torticollis, and that's basically when you have limited neck mobility, and she wasn't able to fully turn her head, I guess, just not really being mobile a lot, being born so soon, so she was laying down a lot and one position, and before we knew it, her head was totally flat. And I was freaking out. I was panicking, thinking, okay, well, what happened, with my child? And when I took her to the pediatrician, she said, well, don't be alarmed. She has torticollis, but physical therapy can do this, fix this. And then just because babies are resilient, her head shaping will go back to where it needs to be. So we were in therapy for months, and we saw a neurosurgeon to work with her head shape. I mean, like Kate said, there's a lot. So not only did we leave the NICU, we went to various therapies, neurosurgeon, just to see if she needed a helmet, all sorts of things that were all a result of her being born prematurely. Today, she's a very happy, healthy 2.5-year-old who's running the entire house, and her 5-year-old brother. So you can't tell her anything about, that she's not the feistiest thing on the planet. But it didn't start off like that. I have a son, and he was born full term, 4 days over his due date. It was the best storybook pregnancy I think one could ask for. I too had uterine fibroids that my OBGYN was monitoring, thinking that those could contribute to a preterm birth for my son, but thankfully it didn't. We were monitored, they proved to be non-eventful, everything was great. And I really thought that when my husband and I decided to have another child, that we would have those same outcomes. So we found out we were pregnant with my daughter 2 years after having my son. And I was immediately concerned because I had gained weight since I had my son, and I wasn't the same BMI that I was going into that pregnancy. And knowing what I know about maternal child health, I was concerned that perhaps, I'm not feeling my total best. Perhaps this weight may be an issue. We're talking about, 20, 30 pounds. It wasn't a huge thing, but I knew from my background. And I was concerned about, well, what would this mean by the end of the pregnancy? Would I be to a point where I may develop some sort of chronic, hypertension during pregnancy? Does this mean that my chances are greater for gestational diabetes? I didn't know, but all of those things just kind of got ahead of me. But I didn't make it to the end of my pregnancy. I ended up developing the flu around maybe the 21st or 22nd week of my pregnancy. And it was a horrible bout with the flu that ended up manifesting into multiple rounds of bronchitis at the end of the flu episode, and then what I thought was a sinus infection. So I was feeling miserable, and I went to my primary care doctor because I literally could not breathe through my nostrils, and I was feeling terrible. And this was weeks later. This was about 3 or so weeks later. About 4 weeks later. So I went into the doctor, and my blood pressure was super high. So that started my journey. It was about 150 over 100, and the doctor was concerned. So I went home and I laid down and called my OBGYN and wanted to get in to just have them check in and just make sure everything was all right. Well, when I went in about 5 or so hours later, it was still high. Not that high, but enough that she said, you have 2 choices here. You can go back home and lay down and see what happens. Just try to relax. Just try to get out of all these stressful modes that you're in and see what happens. Or you can go to the emergency room for pregnant people, which is called the assessment center in our local birthing hospital. And you can let them monitor you for a few hours. Perhaps this is a transient episode, and you can go home. Let's just let them monitor you. Well, I did go to assessment. Thank God I did, because I didn't go back home. I stayed there for 4 days, up and down, blood pressure, up and down, steroids, blood sugar up. It was just a journey. I was supposed to go home and be on modified bed rest, which meant I'm a lobbyist by profession. I couldn't drive out of state to go lobby the various legislatures. I couldn't even take my son to daycare. He wanted me to just lay down. So, but I didn't check out of the hospital. None of that was my reality. One early morning at the end of my hospital stay, because my blood pressure was starting to go up and down and my child became non-responsive, or literally less responsive rather, the neonatologist came in and said, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Your child's heart rate doesn't have enough variability. I'm concerned that she may not be getting the proper amount of oxygen. So they gave me some oxygen. Things didn't change. And basically, the doctor stood up and said, we're delivering a baby this morning. And I was 28 weeks and a day and frightened, because just a few weeks before my doctor, informed us that I had a placental abnormality where my placenta was partially blocking my birth canal, which could prove very dangerous for vaginal delivery, and it could be life-threatening as well. So they would want to intervene and do a C-section ahead of time, and then I could potentially hemorrhage if my placenta did not detach properly. So in hearing all of this, that you're about to have a C-section, and hearing my doctor say, well, you could hemorrhage and we may have to, remove your entire uterus to keep you from bleeding, I didn't really know the outcome, what was going to happen to me. So it was a very frightening moment for myself and my husband. But thankfully, my daughter was delivered. She did require a substantial amount of intervention. She could not breathe on her own. And she went to the NICU, where she stayed for 56 days. Thankfully, we were able to get a round of steroids in, which helped strengthen her lungs. We were able to get a magnesium drip for me, which helped prevent or lessen the likelihood of her having brain bleeds. She did have a bilateral grade 1 brain bleed. And thankfully, she was able to overcome that, and it resolved on its own. It didn't require surgery, but those 56 days were fairly uneventful for her health-wise after she made it past that first month. But the first few weeks were definitely touch and go. where everything, from, she needs blood platelets in the first few days. They're testing her liver because just certain functioning's not happening properly that we were concerned about. At one point, the neonatologist came in out of nowhere and told us that it was suspected that she had missing brain matter in her frontal lobe, which really sent me over the edge at that moment, and not knowing what that meant. Thankfully, the radiologist test proved that was not the case. She did not have anything of the sort, and we just needed her to grow, maintain her body temperature, get big, be able to breathe on her own, feed on her own, and she would come home with us. So it was definitely that roller coaster of a journey that you hear parents talk about. Every day is different, and you are just going through different things. And Kate touched upon something that was really important too, is that a lot of parents, are working parents, and you have to work, and there becomes this time where you have to make a decision. And I know a lot of men who are partners to moms who have babies in the NICU oftentimes don't have the advantage of having proper paid leave. So I know, and Kaden has talked about this as well, but for me, my husband did not have adequate paid leave on his job. So after I was dismissed from the hospital after staying there a week after birth, because I was still experiencing pregnancy-induced hypertension. So I couldn't go home until I was stabilized to make sure that I did not become a statistic on that end in terms of maternal mortality. He had to go back to work, which meant I had to be there by myself until he would get off of work in the evening. So all of these tests that came through, all of these results, basically sitting there, the isolate with our child, that is something that a lot of moms have to go at alone, because that spousal or partner support, is not there just because of inadequacies in terms of our leave system. And then as a mom, thankfully, I did have paid leave through my employer. Of course, you never feel like you have enough, but some people don't have anything at all. A lot of women, I understand, especially in the NICU, especially women of color, are going back to work within 2 weeks of a delivery. Some women as early as 3 to 5 days, which is inhumane and dangerous and potentially deadly. So on top of going through the trauma of whatever your traumatic birth experience may have been, then there comes the other phases after that, where you have to make a decision. Do I stay here with my child? Am I able to kangaroo care and help them survive? Am I able to, breastfeed and give them what they need to survive? Or do I have to go and clock in and make a paycheck so that my family can survive? And these are real life scenarios that families are going through because of inadequate policies that exist that don't support families and families' well-being. So I'm happy that Kate brought that up, because that too can also aid in trauma and the mental health outcomes of families, which Kate mentioned about PTSD. And Kate and I are very good friends. We met in the midst of our tragedies and turned that into triumph, a triumphant experience. But I too experienced perinatal traumatic stress disorder. And it is something that is prevalent. There's research that shows upwards of 50% of NICU families that go through this can develop PTSD, perinatal PTSD, excuse me. So it's something that is not unique to Kate or myself. It's something that families go through, but unlike Kate and myself, a lot of folks don't talk about it, but it's something that has to be addressed, for the betterment of the entire family and the child as well.
Thank you for sharing. I'm glad. I think I have an echo. I am glad that Zoe is the boss lady at home now. Who would have thought that she would do that? So all praise and thanks to God for her being a trooper. And also congratulations to you for hanging in there and, doing this mothering. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about mothering, Kate. Would you want to tell us what happened when you got home and how this whole mothering process works with preterm babies?
Absolutely. And I want to make sure that I didn't, paint a too beautiful picture of the NICU. I mean, there were definitely days where it was a roller coaster. I remember many nights sleeping with my phone by my ear, waiting for news, or walking into my child's room and the doctor standing there, and you knew that something was bad. The worst day in the NICU was the day that my son could not regulate his temperature. He was very pale, and they were testing him for an infection. And if you're have a child in the hospital, you know that being tested for an infection is one of the scariest things that can happen. So while we were lucky and our end was beautiful, there were definitely very hard days. I want to make sure I didn't shadow that too much. Now, when we came home, I was so itching to get to the finish line. I wanted the light at the end of the tunnel. And those last few weeks and days there, I was just so ready to put my babies in their coming home outfits and put them in their baby carriers and be normal. Because I thought, you know what, when we leave the hospital, we're going to be normal, right? I'm just going to be a mom. These are going to be my babies. We're going to have all this behind us. And as Frankie touched on, the NICU journey does not end the day that you leave. Honestly, for me, it got a lot harder. I left my bubble. I left my safe support zone. Every time I had a scary question, or I was confused or concerned or didn't know what to do, there was a nurse or doctor there to answer all my questions. And I very much remember having that high of leaving with my babies and getting home, and we got them settled inside. We took them out of their car seat carriers, and it was 2:00. It was time for their bottle. And neither one of my babies wanted to drink their bottle. And I had an overwhelming, complete and total panic meltdown of, oh my gosh, we left the NICU too soon. I don't know what I'm doing. I know that any mom that brings a baby home, it's probably very scary, but for us, we watched our babies turn blue when they couldn't breathe. We were given CPR classes and told what to expect, because preemies a lot of times stop breathing in the middle of the night, or they choke on their milk. There's a lot of things that preemies have that are underdeveloped, and it can be a scarier journey when you come home. So we were very on alarm. We had witnessed a lot of traumatic, horrible things in the NICU that happened, such as your baby being ripped out of your hands to get them stimulated breathing again, all of those things. So when we got home, we were very alarmed. We were trying to do the best job that we could to keep these babies healthy and whatnot. And Two, when we brought our children home, it was November 19th. So this is their coming home week. This is a really special week for us. But we were in one of the most historical, worst flus that we were having. Do we lose you, Marjy? Okay. So anyhow, when we brought them home, it was in the middle of flu season. So we had that. When you bring a baby home from the NICU, you have to be extremely worried about germs. They have no immune system. A cold, a flu could be deadly for a baby. In addition to that, we were watching their temperatures. If it dropped below 97 degrees, it was straight to the ER. And then a few weeks later, we started immediately on early intervention. We were meeting with our early interventionist. We were starting OT. We were starting PT. We were starting speech, because for a baby born early, you start that early intervention as soon as possible, because catching them up starts immediately. For us, everything was adjusted. We had an adjustment date and a birth date. So when they were 1 month old, we were 1 month old, and 8 weeks adjusted. So that was different in that aspect as well. We had many follow-up appointments. We saw multiple specialists. When we were in the NICU, we were at risk for brain bleeds. We were at risk for ROP, which is an eye issue that many premature babies have. We had heart holes that we were waiting to close. So in addition to seeing the pediatrician, we were seeing the ophthalmologist, we were seeing a cardiologist, we were seeing a neurologist, we were seeing, multiple specialist appointments as well. So what I thought of, we're going to leave the NICU and be normal, turned into a very hectic lifestyle of keeping these babies safe, keeping them germ-free, keeping them in check with all of their specialist appointments, watching their development to make sure that they were on track. And then, I spent so much time worrying about their physical health in the NICU and when we came home, that I was not focusing on me, and the mental trauma that I had went through. Never really took the time to check in with myself. So Again, as Frankie talked about, this maternal mental health piece is so very important to both of us because it's something that we experienced. And, Frankie and I both come from families where we have a lot of assistance, a lot of help, a lot of resources. We're extremely educated. We both, Frankie, being in the March of Dimes, knew a lot about preterm birth. I was in the healthcare field, didn't know a lot about preterm birth. But the thing that you have to say is Frankie and I went through this experience and we felt isolated. We felt alone. We felt confused. We felt like we didn't have a lot of direction. And as two people with resources and assistance to feel that way, where I am is I was constantly questioning, what about single moms? What about uneducated moms? What about moms without resources or without help? Like, if I feel like I can barely do this with everything that I have, like, how are they making it? Who's checking in on them? And I'm extremely passionate about the fact that a mom has to be mentally healthy to be able to take care of a baby, and especially a baby that might have critical health care needs. Coming home, many babies from the NICU come home on equipment, medicines with multiple specialist appointments. So mom definitely needs to be healthy to take care of that baby, and so that baby has the best start that they possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Kate. And now, I have about 3 or 4 more questions, but it looks like we have only 15 more minutes. We could talk for hours, ladies. My question is, for women out there that are pregnant, what are the signs? What should they look out for? That's my first question, and that will go to Frankie. Now, my second question after that, still going to Frankie, is what are the policies out there? Are there any organizations working other than March of Dimes? Are there any organizations advocating for mothers and babies? What can we learn? Where should we go?
Absolutely. Thank you. So first question, in terms of signs of preterm birth. So, I mean, there are different signs, for women who have chronic health conditions that I'll say are fortunate to have these things diagnosed, right? Where they know they're going into, pregnancy, and they have high blood pressure, or they've been tested and they know, they have risk factors for preterm birth. They can work with their OBGYN to monitor their overall health to make sure that they're on track. Some things are silent. You can't feel when you have high blood pressure. That's a risk factor. There's certain symptoms that you can look out for, maybe swelling. They'll say you have lights flashing, things like that, but you can't necessarily feel that. But some signs of preterm birth, you may have, obviously, if a woman's water breaks, and that's pretty obvious. There could be pressure in your abdominal region, pain in your back, various things like that may be associated with uterine type pain that'll be much more obvious. So it really just depends, but that's oftentimes a sure giveaway that there may be something that you may need to medically get checked out. The important thing for folks to understand is that you know your body better than anyone. Unfortunately, there's times where there are women who may call in and report to their doctor that they're experiencing some abnormalities, and those complaints aren't validated or aren't taken seriously or aren't heard. Sometimes doctors are super busy and nurses are super busy, but moms have to make sure that you are communicating, documenting as best you can, and being your biggest and best self advocate, your partner, your family members, having that backup to make sure that if you feel like something's wrong or you feel there's some signs that are not right, making sure that you're communicating that to your medical provider, even those who may not listen. Also, you mentioned, the next question was about policies. I mean, there are various types of policies. There's hospital policies, and there are just regular policies. I mentioned access to healthcare, making sure that women they're able to access the medical treatments that they need to be able to see a doctor. So making sure that for states that need to expand Medicaid, that is made available to women so that we can see a doctor. Also, looking at just access to basic things that, like I mentioned before, contribute to the overall well-being of women, making sure that women have adequate access to transportation, making sure that the social determinants of health aren't adversely affecting various populations, that women are able to take advantage of fair wages, things that we have to navigate through everyday life that create abnormal stressors that can certainly trigger preterm births. So there's a lot of policies, things like making sure that women have access to programs like group prenatal care, which is shown proven to help reduce preterm births specifically for minority women by offering a group prenatal care model where women come together in groups of 10 or 15 and they see a doctor together. And there's also a sense of accountability and shared community and family for women to be able to share their experiences, and especially being able to share experiences in terms of like a shared sisterhood, and being able to have people that can relate to the various things that you're going through while you're pregnant, particularly for minority women. So, and even after pregnancy, policies like making sure that women have access to paid family leave, making sure that people have access to sick leave while they're pregnant, making sure that people have access to maternal mental health resources, access to whether it's medications or even therapies is important, because as I mentioned, maternal mental health is a huge issue. And we do know from research that perinatal mood disorders can contribute to preterm birth. So just looking also at societal factors, women who may be dealing with things like post-traumatic stress disorder unrelated to a preterm birth, but going into a pregnancy with, let's say, a scary life event, a weather-related disaster, racial trauma, things like that, that can negatively impact the overall health of a woman. So if we can address policies that provide more equitable outcomes for women and women of color, that would go a long way in terms of addressing the racial disparities in preterm birth, the policies overall that all moms can benefit from, like basic health care and insurance, would go a long way in preventing preterm birth.
Thank you for sharing. All moms need to hear this, whether you've had a baby at preterm or whether you had a regular birth. These are stories that we need to hear, and uplift each other and be there for each other, because as Frankie said, that sisterhood does help. Now we have to remember there are mothers who may be single moms. There may be mothers who may not have full-time jobs. So once we have that sisterhood, that tribe, people would have a support system and we can support each other. This is very important conversation. If you are watching, thank you so much to our viewers, to our audience. Share this with your network. Let other people know. This is Prematurity Awareness Month. That is November. And I believe next week is World Premature Day. Is that right, Kate?
I think so, yes.
Yes. And so let's get the awareness out there, so that people will learn. As I was telling you earlier, my mom was born at 7 months. She's over 70 years now. All praise and thanks to God. And so with this, I have a question for you, Kate. Do you want to tell us about the life of your twins? Do you have any statistics with babies who are born preterm, survival rates, and how they do after they come home?
Right. Again, I think it's very different for every baby. Our children were born at 28 weeks and they had extremely great outcomes. I'm a member of many NICU support groups, and I see 28-week babies every day that don't make it, that come home on oxygen or a trach. Those are things that we didn't experience. I've seen 24-week babies that have done amazing. A very close friend of mine has a 26-week, a little boy that was born at 26 weeks, And he's far more advanced than my child, who was born at 28 weeks. My son went through a lot of therapy. We went through a time where we were extremely concerned of how delayed he was. He's still delayed. He's still catching up. He's doing an amazing job. So for different, the amazing thing is, and the one thing that really gets me emotional, if my children had been born 20 years ago, they probably would not have made it. Medicine is getting more advanced every day. Medicine is getting more incredible every day. The fact that they can save a 22-week baby is absolutely phenomenal. And it makes me wonder where we're going to be in 20 more years with preterm birth. What kinds of things will we be doing? So that, I think that's kind of where I am on that. I just think every child is different. Any woman that's out there that's on bed rest, if you're 27 weeks, I don't want you to hear me saying that my children turned out amazing, that you're fine, you're going to be fine. I hope you are, but I also think it's a time to take it serious. Every woman's goal should be to get to 40 weeks, regardless of somebody else's outcomes. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, yes, it does. It does answer the question. Thank you so much for shedding light on your story. Frankie and Kate, you have been amazing, sharing your journey with us. This is important information, and I'm so glad that we were able to talk about it. Viewers, it's important to have healthcare policies that work for all Americans, because as you heard from these stories, if Kate didn't have that great health insurance, she would have been saddled with a huge healthcare bill. Recently, I received some questions from some members of our community about the Affordable Care Act, and they were talking about their children who have been sick, who need constant care. And, some people have paid a lifetime bill of about $3 million on maybe one child. But, based on the health insurance available to that family, they're able to bring their bill down. So these are all policies that we have to make sure that our legislators speak up for us, because there are mothers out there that may not have the best insurance. And also, we have to take care of these little ones because they are our future. Now, I'm going to go back to Frankie. Frankie, it's Prematurity Awareness Month. Do you have any parting words, any advice for mothers out there?
I do. Prematurity Awareness Month is a time that I would look forward to each year, and spreading information about premature birth prevention. And it wasn't until 2018 that this month took on a totally different meaning for me, being a mom of a premature baby. And I would just say that, yes, this month is very important in terms of awareness, in terms of being able to share stories about preterm birth. And for those of us who do have a triumphant story about our child surviving their prematurity, there are just as many parents who don't have a triumphant story about being able to bring their premature baby home. Premature birth is a leading cause of death in the first month of life, and a major contributor to infant mortality, which is the death of a child within the first year of life. So just as Kate and I are so fortunate to celebrate the fact that we brought our children home, we can share our journeys and share community with families who dealt with the trauma of a traumatic birth, and just having your child in intensive care. There's so many parents who can't even share that story. So I definitely want to remember them and uplift them during this time and always as well. But then also want to just, in addition to talking about our child and our experience, just also make sure that we are centering the needs of parents, not just moms like myself and Kate, but of fathers and families and support systems that all make up the NICU community that are there, if you are so fortunate to have as a part of your NICU support system that is truly needed when you're going through something that can be as traumatic as this. And then also just wanting to call attention to the issues that contribute to premature birth. And as I mentioned, in terms of racial disparities, it is very important to understand that the lived experiences for women of various races and ethnicities differs. And that's something that Kate and I were speaking about when we were chatting earlier. So that's important to note, and how those lived experiences impact the overall health of women, and how that contributes to preterm birth, and how that contributes to this growing disparity amongst Black and white women and Hispanic women.
Thank you for those powerful words. Now, Kate, any parting words for our viewers?
Absolutely. As I've noted, the NICU journey was it was lonely. It was isolating. Coming home was lonely and isolating. There were a lot of things that I looked forward to that I missed out on. Baby showers because my twins came too soon. Having friends meet them because they couldn't because germs were too real. And one thing that I continue to think about right now while we're in this pandemic is the moms that are having babies right now during a pandemic. I'm sure, and I've thought about it so many times, that they're feeling that same isolation and loneliness of not getting to share such a beautiful experience with friends and family because nobody can come to the hospital or an ultrasound or come visit afterwards. They're not getting as much support because we're socially distancing from each other. It's a lonely journey, being a NICU mom and having a traumatic birth. And I definitely don't think we need to not discount the moms that are having babies right now during this worldwide pandemic. So my advice is, if you're a mom that has had a traumatic birth, a pregnancy that it didn't go the way that you wanted, a miscarriage, you have a COVID, a child during COVID, you're feeling that isolation, you're feeling alone, like reach out, talk to somebody. Your doctor will talk to you. Reach out to a friend. Let somebody know you're not doing okay. And then second of all, if you're the friend or family member of that person, reach out, ask them if they're okay. And what I always tell people is, every mom's going to say, I'm fine. But if they've been through a traumatic experience, you need to say, no, are you really okay? How are you doing? I tell my friends all the time that have a child that's going through the NICU stay or had a traumatic birth, that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be happy and to grieve at the same time for the things that you didn't have. Just reaching out to somebody that's going through something and letting them know that they're normal and that you're a safe space for them to share a dark moment with is what women need to do. I definitely think we need to continue increasing the conversation about traumatic birth, pregnancies that don't go the way a woman planned. I think social media definitely glamorizes a lot. And so when a woman doesn't get what Facebook says she should, she feels like a failure. So I just think we need to continue to find that, I think we need to continue that conversation. I think we need to deglamorize pregnancy and normalize women's feelings when things don't go according to plan. And then most of all, finding your tribe. My tribe is Frankie. My tribe is other moms that went through the NICU, because there are days that I only want to talk to people that went through what I went through because I'm in a funk. So find your tribe and talk to people, have that conversation. And then the last thing that I really want to end with in my most important advice is, a lot of times preterm birth cannot be prevented, but a lot of times that it can. Your doctor can see what's going on. We're living in this world of COVID where we're afraid to go places. We might be afraid to go to the doctor. Do not miss your OBGYN appointments. Do not miss your prenatal care. It is so important to take care of yourself and your baby, especially right now. I'm so fortunate to have Frankie in my tribe, but it's not a journey that I wish on anybody. I want all my friends and all my loved ones to make it to 40 weeks and to never experience 1 ounce of what we went through. So please, anybody that's listening, take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your friends, take care of your physical and your mental health. I would love every baby in the world to be born when they're supposed to.
Such powerful words, so meaningful. Now, viewers, I live with people in my house, and I still do feel lonely sometimes. And so this pandemic has taken a toll on everybody. Just as Kate said, reach out to your tribe, find your network, find your person. And you know what? If you don't have a person, go to marjymarj.com, shoot me an email. I'll get in touch. We can pray together. These are tough times. This pandemic has taken a toll on so many families. To the mothers out there, our heart goes out to you. We know that it's tough being in the hospital at this time because sometimes people can't even get visitors when they're in the hospital. So these are really tough times, and we understand. Now, shoot me an email if you are a mother of a preterm baby. I can put you in touch with Kate. I can put you in touch with Frankie. They have a heart of gold, and they're advocates for you. They do care about you. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a very informational session. I'm so glad that Kate reached out and that Frankie joined her, and we have learned so much about babies and mothers. Next week, we're going to be back here at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a wonderful celebration. We have pharmacists Vigo and Rachel Dodu. They have a very powerful story to share. Rachel worked for a major retail pharmacy for several years, and as a result of COVID-19, she got laid off. That was very sad, but you know what? She tapped into her inner strength and she started making some uplifting scents, candles of her own. And then Vigo has a pharmacy store himself, and he's been making some natural supplements. You will be amazed by their story. They are resilient and they are moving forward. You know, COVID-19 has had such an impact on people from all walks of life all around the world. So please tune in next week. Tell your friends to tell a friend. And this video is going to be up on YouTube. It's going to be on Marjy TV, Facebook. And guess what? It's on all the major podcasts. So go back there, listen to Frankie and Kate when you're going on your morning walk or your weekend walk. When you're cooking, you can listen to them. Share it with your friends. We're going to keep replaying it and we're going to learn more about our babies and our mothers. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Marjy Marj of Humanity Chat signing off, and I will see you next week.